There is a moment that arrives without announcement. A threshold crossed in silence. The empath, who has spent years absorbing, soothing, carrying the emotional chaos of another, suddenly stops. Not through anger, not through dramatic confrontation, but through something far more profound. An internal shift so complete that the entire psychic structure reorganizes itself. The narcissist feels it immediately. Though they lack the language to describe what has changed, they sense that the ground beneath the relationship has vanished. The person who once mirrored their fabricated perfection, who absorbed their shame and rage like a sponge, who made their psychological survival possible, has somehow become impermeable. The projections that once found a home now ricochet back to their source. This is not a battle between good and evil. It is not empaths versus narcissists, as modern psychology simplistically frames it. What we are witnessing is something far older, far more archetypal. We are watching the moment when projection meets consciousness, when shadow returns to its origin, when the psychological laws that govern human relationship assert themselves with the inevitability of gravity. The language of empaths and narcissists is contemporary, but the mechanism beneath it is ancient. What was once discussed in terms of psychological possession projection and the shadow now gets packaged into pop psychology binaries. Yet the core truth remains unchanged. One person externalizes their darkness, another person absorbs it. A closed circuit forms. Two nervous systems become entangled in an invisible dance of projection and reception. But what happens when that circuit breaks? What happens when the receiver stops receiving? The answer is both simple and terrifying. The projection has nowhere to go. Like light hitting a mirror at an angle, it returns to the sender. The narcissist, who has organized their entire psyche around denying their own darkness, suddenly finds themselves flooded with the very content they have spent a lifetime exiling. The shame they placed in you returns as their own. The rage they made you carry appears in their chest. The emptiness they ran from catches up. This is not revenge. This is not the empath weaponizing their boundaries. This is natural law. Every rejected part of the self must eventually be integrated, or it will destroy from within. The psyche does not forgive evasion. What is refused will return again and again in increasingly forceful ways until it is finally witnessed. Boundaries are not walls built to punish. They are membranes that allow authentic connection while preventing psychic invasion. When the empath establishes a boundary, they are not sending anything back. They are simply no longer volunteering to be the container for another soul's disowned material. The demons were always the narcissists. They merely found temporary shelter in someone else's nervous system. Here is the hidden wisdom that most will miss. When those demons return to their rightful owner, an opportunity for transformation appears. Not a comfortable opportunity, not a welcome one, but perhaps the only real chance for consciousness to penetrate the shell of denial. Most narcissists will reject this opportunity violently. They will rage, manipulate, flee to find new containers. But in rare moments when the projection fails completely and there is nowhere left to run, the shell can crack. And through that crack, something true can finally emerge. Before we go deeper into this psychological territory, if what you are hearing resonates with something you have lived but could never name, take a moment to subscribe and like this content. This exploration goes further than most are willing to venture, and your engagement helps it reach others who need to understand what is happening in their own souls. To understand what happens when the empath stops absorbing, we must first understand the mechanism that made absorption possible. At the center of this dynamic lies one of the most powerful discoveries in depth psychology, the concept of projection. Projection is the unconscious process by which we externalize aspects of ourselves we cannot accept. These unacceptable aspects, these disowned parts of our identity, collectively form what is called the shadow. The shadow contains everything we have learned to deny about ourselves. Our rage, our selfishness, our cruelty, our neediness, our shame. Everything our ego cannot integrate gets pushed into this psychological underworld. But the shadow does not disappear. It continues to exist, demanding recognition. And when we refuse to see it within ourselves, we begin to see it everywhere around us. We project it onto others. The traits we most vehemently criticize in other people are often the very traits we cannot acknowledge in ourselves. The narcissist who accuses everyone of being selfish is refusing to see their own profound self-centeredness. The person who constantly fears betrayal is often the one harboring betrayal in their own heart. In the narcissistic pattern, projection becomes a survival mechanism. The narcissistic structure is not chosen consciously. It develops as a response to early wounding so severe that the authentic self must be buried to survive. In its place, a false self is constructed. A grandiose image of perfection, superiority, or specialness. This false self serves as armor protecting the vulnerable true self that lies beneath, terrified and convinced of its own worthlessness. But maintaining this false self requires enormous psychological energy. Every feeling of inadequacy, every moment of shame, every experience of vulnerability threatens to shatter the illusion. So these experiences must be immediately externalized. They must be placed in someone else. The narcissist must find a vessel, a container, someone who will carry their darkness so they do not have to face it. This is where the empath enters the story. Empaths possess a particular configuration of psychological boundaries. These boundaries are porous, permeable, highly sensitive to the emotional states of others. This sensitivity is not weakness. It is a form of perception. Empaths can sense the invisible currents of feeling that move through relationships and spaces. They can detect pain before it is spoken, rage before it is expressed, need before it is named. This gift of perception served crucial functions in our ancestral past. The person who could sense danger in the emotional field of the tribe, who could anticipate storms brewing in the hearts of others, increased the survival of the group. Empathy was selected for. It was adaptive. But in the modern world, where we are exposed to far more people and far more emotional content than our nervous systems evolved to process, this gift becomes a burden. The empath's porous boundaries make them ideal containers for projection. When the narcissist unconsciously seeks someone to carry their shadow, the empath system lights up like a beacon. Here is someone who can feel what I am feeling. Here is someone whose boundaries are weak enough to allow my emotional content to enter. Here is someone who will not immediately reject what I project. And so begins what depth psychology calls the participation mystique. A merging of consciousness. A blurring of boundaries so complete that the empath can no longer distinguish their own emotions from those they are absorbing. The narcissist deposits their shame, and the empath experiences it as their own inadequacy. The narcissist projects their self-hatred, and the empath begins to believe they are fundamentally flawed. The narcissist externalizes their terror of emptiness, and the empath feels hollow without understanding why. The empath unconsciously agrees to this arrangement, not through words, but through a deep, unspoken contract formed in the first moments of connection. I will carry your shadow so you do not have to face it. I will be the repository for your pain. I will absorb what you cannot hold. This agreement creates temporary stability for the narcissist. Their false self remains intact. Their demons are safely stored in another person's psyche. But this stability comes at the cost of the empath's destruction. Over time, the empath becomes a reservoir of darkness that does not belong to them. Their nervous system is flooded with foreign content. They feel anxious without cause, depressed without reason, ashamed without justification. They begin to believe they are the problem. They accept the narcissist's projection as truth. If the narcissist says they are too sensitive, too needy, too difficult, the empath believes it. The projection is complete. Every interaction between the narcissist and the empath involves this invisible transaction. The narcissist unconsciously offloads their disowned content. The empath unconsciously absorbs it. Both believe they are loving each other. Both believe this is what relationship requires. But what is actually happening is a slow dissolution of the empath's sense of self and a reinforcement of the narcissist's psychological defenses. There is an old observation from depth psychology that speaks to this dynamic. When two personalities meet, it is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But in the narcissist-empath configuration, only one transforms. Only one dissolves. The empath loses their boundaries, their identity, their vitality. The narcissist remains unchanged, their false self preserved by the empath's sacrifice. Now we must ask the question that reveals everything. Why can the narcissist not face their own shadow? Why must they externalize it so completely? The narcissistic structure is built on a foundation of denial so absolute that any crack in the facade threatens total collapse. Beneath the grandiosity, beneath the arrogance, beneath the seeming confidence, lies a wound of such magnitude that it cannot be approached directly. Often this wound formed in early childhood. A moment or series of moments when the authentic self was rejected, shamed, or annihilated. The child learned that who they truly were was unacceptable. So they created someone else, someone impressive, someone beyond criticism, someone who would never be rejected again. This false self becomes the entire identity. The real self, with all its vulnerability and need and humanity, gets locked in a vault so deep that even the narcissist forgets it exists. To acknowledge their demons would require opening that vault. It would require feeling the original wound. It would require dismantling the entire structure they have built to protect themselves from ever feeling that pain again. For most, this is psychologically impossible. The terror is too great. So the shadow must be kept external. It must be projected onto partners, onto children, onto anyone close enough to receive it. The narcissist sees themselves as perpetual victim, surrounded by people who are inadequate, betraying, or cruel. They cannot see that what they perceive in others is the reflection of their own disowned darkness. They cannot see because seeing would undo them. There is a principle in depth psychology that states what we resist persists, and what we refuse to integrate returns as fate. The narcissist's fate is to encounter their shadow everywhere. In every relationship, in every conflict, in every moment of crisis, the same darkness appears. But it always appears as if it belongs to someone else. The narcissist will spend their entire life fleeing from themselves, exhausting everyone who comes close, never understanding that the enemy they fear is within. This is the tragedy at the heart of the narcissistic pattern. Not evil, but profound unconsciousness. Not malice, but terror so deep it has calcified into a personality structure. The narcissist is not a monster. They are a wounded child wearing elaborate armor, unable to remove it, slowly suffocating inside it. And then comes the day when the empath system says no more, not through conscious decision at first. The nervous system itself reaches a threshold. The soul, that deeper intelligence beneath thought, recognizes that it is drowning in material that does not belong to it. Survival instinct activates, but not the survival of the body, the survival of the self. This is the beginning of individuation, the process by which a person separates from collective unconsciousness and becomes a distinct, integrated individual. For the empath, individuation begins with the recognition that I am not you. Your pain is not my pain. Your shame is not my shame. Your demons are not mine to carry. This recognition does not arrive gently. It often comes through crisis. The empath collapses under the weight of absorbed darkness, or they have a moment of clarity so sharp it cuts through years of fog, or they simply wake up one morning and cannot continue. The mechanism of absorption, which functioned automatically for so long, suddenly jams. The psychic door that was always open begins to close. The first boundary is the most difficult. It might be a simple word, no, or it might be a silence where there was once immediate response, or it might be a turning away from the narcissist's emotional storm instead of rushing to calm it. However it appears, this first boundary represents a seismic shift in the psychic economy between two people. When the empath establishes this boundary, something extraordinary happens in the invisible realm of psychological projection. The narcissist's shadow, which has been flowing into the empath like water, finding its level, suddenly encounters resistance. The projection that once landed softly in the empath's receptive nervous system now bounces back. It returns to its source like an echo, like sonar, hitting a solid object and revealing the shape of what sent it. The narcissist experiences this return viscerally, but they cannot understand what is happening. They only know that suddenly, inexplicably, they feel terrible. The shame they placed in the empath yesterday now churns in their own gut. The rage they made the empath carry now burns in their own chest. The emptiness they ran from now yawns inside them. And because they have no framework for understanding that these feelings are theirs, that they have always been theirs, they can only interpret this experience as attack. You have changed, the narcissist says. You have become cold, cruel, selfish. You are not the person I fell in love with. What they are really saying is this: you are no longer willing to be my psychological waste receptacle. You are no longer absorbing what I cannot face. And now I am drowning in my own disowned material, and it is unbearable, and it must be your fault. The blame intensifies because the alternative is impossible. To acknowledge that these feelings are their own, that they have been projecting for years, that their entire self-image is constructed on denial, would shatter the false self completely. The narcissist would have to face the wound beneath the armor. They would have to feel the terror of their own emptiness. For most, this is equivalent to psychological death. So they rage instead. They manipulate. They guilt. They threaten. Anything to force the empath back into the old role, back into absorption, back into being the container. This is the moment depth psychology calls enantiodromia, the sudden emergence of the unconscious opposite. When something is pushed too far in one direction, when a psychological stance becomes too rigid, the psyche compensates by swinging to the other extreme. The narcissist, who has maintained grandiosity through projection, suddenly confronts the opposite. Worthlessness, shame, fragility. Everything they exiled comes flooding back. Most cannot bear it. They will desperately seek a new empath, a new container, someone else to absorb their shadow, so they can return to the stability of denial. This is why narcissists often move quickly from relationship to relationship. Not because they are incapable of love, but because they are incapable of sitting with their own darkness. Each relationship follows the same pattern. Idealization when they find someone who will absorb their projections. Devaluation when that person inevitably becomes saturated and can absorb no more. Discard when they must find a fresh container. But occasionally, very occasionally, something different happens at this threshold. The narcissist encounters their returning shadow and has nowhere to run. Perhaps they have exhausted all their relationships. Perhaps age or circumstance has trapped them. Perhaps grace intervenes in some inexplicable way. And in that moment of total crisis, when the false self cracks and the demons pour through consciousness, has a chance to enter. This is the hidden gift the empath offers by establishing boundaries. Not punishment, but possibility. Your darkness is yours to transform, and in its transformation lies your gold. This is the language of alchemy, the metaphor depth psychology uses to describe psychological development. The narcissist's demons are their prima materia, their raw material. If they can contain these demons, sit with them, allow them to burn away the false self, what emerges can be authentic, real, whole. But we must be honest. Very few accept this gift. The path of integration requires facing unbearable pain. It requires dismantling everything the narcissist has built to protect themselves. It requires admitting that the perfect image was a lie, that the superiority was compensation, that beneath the armor is a wounded, terrified, deeply human soul that needs compassion, not projection. Most will not walk this path. Most will find new empaths and repeat the cycle until they die, never knowing what they lost, never knowing who they might have become. This is their tragedy, but it is not the empath's responsibility. You cannot individuate for another person. You cannot force consciousness on someone who is committed to unconsciousness. You cannot save someone from their own shadow work. The empath must understand this completely. When you establish boundaries, when you stop absorbing, when the narcissist's demons return to them and they rage at you for it, you are not abandoning them. You are offering them the most profound respect possible. You are saying this: your soul has work to do. Your darkness is your teacher. I cannot do this work for you. No one can. This is your path, your curriculum, your opportunity for transformation. Whether they take that opportunity or flee from it is beyond your control. Your task is to protect your own psychic integrity, to continue your own individuation, to stop sacrificing yourself on the altar of someone else's unconsciousness. This is not cruelty. This is honoring the reality that each soul must meet its own darkness, and attempting to do this work for another is not love. It is interference with their sacred process of becoming whole. The empath who understands this can release the narcissist with compassion. Not the bleeding, absorbed, enmeshed compassion of before, but the clear, boundaried, conscious compassion of one who sees the other's struggle without drowning in it. You can witness their pain without carrying it. You can understand their fear without absorbing it. You can recognize their wound without sacrificing yourself to heal it. This is mastery, and it begins the moment you say no to being a container for another's darkness. That no is not an act of war. It is an act of profound wisdom. It is the moment you remember that Carl Jung, empath, and personal development are intrinsically linked through the sacred process of becoming a sovereign self. Separate yet related, sensitive yet boundaried, open yet protected. When the empath stops absorbing the narcissist's projections, something remarkable happens in the energetic architecture of the psyche. All the energy that was flowing outward, scattered across the emotional landscapes of others, begins to return. It flows back to center like water finding its source. The empath who felt depleted, fragmented, hollow, suddenly experiences a strange fullness. Vitality returns. Clarity sharpens. The fog that made everything confusing lifts, and for the first time in years, maybe decades, the empath can feel the boundaries of their own being. This return of energy is not comfortable, because along with the vitality comes something else. The empath's own shadow. The parts of themselves they exiled while they were busy carrying everyone else's darkness. Now there is space for their own disowned material to emerge, and emerge it does. The empath must face difficult questions. Why did I accept the role of container? What wound in me made this arrangement feel like love? The answers are often painful. Perhaps in childhood, the empath learned that their worth depended on caretaking. Perhaps they discovered that the only way to receive attention was to become indispensable to someone who was suffering. Perhaps love was modeled as self-sacrifice, as the complete dissolution of boundaries, as proving devotion through pain. These early patterns formed what depth psychology calls a complex. A complex is a cluster of emotionally charged ideas and images that function semi-autonomously within the psyche. The empath develops what might be called the savior complex or the martyr complex. This complex operates beneath conscious awareness, driving the empath to seek out people who need saving situations that require self-sacrifice relationships, where their value is determined by how much they can endure. The complex speaks in a voice the empath mistakes for their own conscience. I must help them. If I do not carry their pain, who will? If I establish boundaries, I am selfish. If I prioritize my own needs, I am cruel. This voice is compelling because it is wrapped in the language of virtue, compassion, and love. But it is not the voice of the true self. It is the voice of the wound pretending to be wisdom. The true self, that deeper nucleus of being that depth psychology calls the self with a capital S, speaks differently. It speaks through stillness rather than compulsion. It does not demand sacrifice. It does not generate guilt. When the self guides, there is a quality of rightness, of alignment, even when the action is difficult. The self knows that love does not require the dissolution of boundaries, that compassion does not mean absorbing another's darkness, that helping someone can actually prevent their growth if it allows them to avoid their own necessary suffering. For the empath, to integrate their shadow means facing the uncomfortable truth that beneath the tenderness lies hunger. Hunger to be needed. Hunger to feel important. Hunger to avoid their own emptiness by filling it with someone else's drama. What masquerades as selfless love is often an unconscious contract. I will suffer for you if you will give me a sense of purpose. I will lose myself in your chaos if it means I do not have to face my own void. This revelation is not an indictment. It is liberation. Because only when the shadow of love is seen can love become authentic. Only when the empath recognizes the wound driving their caretaking can they choose to help from a place of genuine overflow rather than desperate need. The process of integration requires the empath to develop what might be called psychological boundaries. These are not the rigid walls of defense that close us off from connection. They are permeable membranes that allow authentic emotional exchange while preventing psychic invasion. The empath must learn to feel another's pain without making it their own, to sense another's darkness without absorbing it, to offer presence without offering their life force. This is the art of discernment. Learning to ask in every moment, is this feeling mine, or am I receiving it from someone else? When sadness arises, pausing to sense its origin. Does it have the quality of my own grief, or does it feel foreign, borrowed, projected? When anxiety floods the system, investigating whether it emerged from my own experience, or whether I am standing too close to someone whose nervous system is dysregulated and broadcasting distress. Developing this discernment requires practice, patience, and a willingness to sit with uncertainty. In the beginning, everything feels tangled, but over time, the empath begins to recognize the signature of their own emotions versus the signature of absorbed material. Their own feelings have a certain resonance, a certain texture. Absorbed feelings feel dissonant, confusing, sometimes overwhelming, in a way that does not match the circumstances of the empath's actual life. As this discernment develops, the empath discovers they can be in the presence of someone who is suffering without taking on their suffering. They can listen to someone's pain without their own nervous system mirroring that pain. They can witness another's emotional storm while remaining anchored in their own center. This is what depth psychology means by individuation. Becoming a distinct, separate self who can remain in relationship without merging, who can connect without losing their own contours. The empath must also integrate what might be called the inner masculine. Not masculine in terms of gender, but in terms of archetypal energy. The feminine principle in Jungian thought is associated with receptivity, fluidity, nurturing, and merging. The masculine principle is associated with boundaries, structured decision, and differentiation. The empath typically overdevelops the feminine and suppresses the masculine. They are all receptivity, all absorption, all yielding. They lack the capacity to say no, to assert limits, to make clear decisions that protect their own integrity. Integration requires balancing these energies. The empath must allow the inner warrior to rise within the inner healer. They must learn that saying no is not violence, that protecting their energy is not selfishness, that choosing themselves is not betrayal. The masculine principle does not destroy compassion. It sanctifies compassion by ensuring the empath has something to give from, rather than giving from depletion. When this integration occurs, relationships transform. Some relationships will end because they were built entirely on the dynamic of projection and absorption. When the empath stops playing their assigned role, there is nothing left. The narcissist moves on, seeking a new container. And though this ending may bring grief, it also brings relief. Because relationships built on unconscious patterns are exhausting. They drain rather than nourish. They diminish rather than expand. Other relationships will deepen purified by the empath's newfound boundaries. The people who truly see the empath, who value them beyond their utility, who are capable of reciprocal exchange, these relationships will strengthen. Because now the empath is present as a whole person, not as a function. They bring their full self to connection, not just their capacity to absorb and soothe. The empath begins to understand that they no longer need to love, conditionally proving their worth through service and sacrifice. They can love from essence, from the unchanging center of their being that does not depend on reciprocity or validation. This is secure love, grounded love. Love that flows naturally because the well is full, not because the empath is desperately trying to fill an inner void through external validation. As the integration deepens, the empath notices their sensitivity transforming. It does not disappear. Sensitivity is not weakness to be overcome. It is a gift, a form of perception. But now the empath relates to their sensitivity differently. What once felt like a curse, like being too open to the world's pain, becomes a refined instrument of awareness. Emotions are no longer tidal waves that flood the system. They become information, signals, messages about the invisible dynamics in any given space or relationship. The empath can sense anger not as contagion, but as data about where power is being negotiated. They can feel sadness not as burden, but as information about where attachment is clinging. They can detect fear not as panic, but as a sign of where trust has not yet been established. Every emotion, when allowed to exist without identification, reveals wisdom. This is what the depth psychological tradition means when it says to make the unconscious conscious. The empath's emotions were always carrying information, but as long as the empath was identified with them, drowning in them, unable to create space between experience and awareness, the information remained inaccessible. Now there is space. The empath can feel deeply and yet observe that feeling simultaneously. They can be moved by emotion without being controlled by it. They can experience the full spectrum of human feeling without losing themselves in any particular state. This is emotional maturity. Not the suppression of feeling, but the capacity to contain feeling, to alchemize it, to learn from it. In this state, the empath is no longer at the mercy of their environment. They can walk into a room full of tension and sense it without becoming tense themselves. They can be in the presence of rage without becoming enraged. They can witness despair without despairing. Their nervous system becomes like a tuning fork. that can detect various frequencies without needing to vibrate at every frequency it encounters. This is the path toward what might be called conscious empathy. The empath no longer helps from pain or obligation. They help from presence and choice. They give because their cup overflows, not because they are trying to earn love. They offer their gifts freely, knowing they can also freely withdraw those gifts when they recognize they are being exploited or when giving would actually harm the other person's growth. The integration of the empath is simultaneously personal and collective. Every empath who learns to establish boundaries, who reclaims their projected energy, who transforms their wound into wisdom, contributes to the evolution of consciousness itself. Because the empath's journey is not just their own. It is a journey on behalf of the wounded healer archetype that lives in the collective unconscious of humanity. As one empath heals, they model a new possibility for all empaths. They show that it is possible to feel deeply without self-destruction, possible to love widely without losing the self, possible to serve without sacrificing. This modeling ripples outward, invisibly changing the field, offering a new template for how sensitive souls can exist in the world without being devoured by it. This is how Carl Jung empath and personal development intersect at the collective level. Individual transformation contributes to collective transformation. The work you do on your own psyche, the boundaries you establish, the consciousness you bring to your sensitivity. All of this serves not just your own liberation, but the liberation of the empathic pattern itself within human consciousness. Now we arrive at the question that haunts every empath who begins to establish boundaries. Am I harming the narcissist by refusing to absorb their projections? Am I being cruel by sending their demons back? The answer requires understanding what is actually happening in this dynamic. You are not sending anything. You are not attacking. You are not weaponizing your boundaries. You are simply ceasing to volunteer as a container for someone else's disowned darkness. The demons were always theirs. They merely found temporary refuge in your nervous system. When you establish boundaries, you are not attacking them with their own shadow. You are declining to carry it any longer. This distinction is crucial because it reveals the hidden wisdom in this dynamic. By refusing to absorb the narcissist's projections, you are actually offering them the highest form of respect. You are saying this: your shadow is your sacred teacher. Your darkness contains the keys to your transformation. I cannot do this work for you, and to attempt it would be to interfere with your soul's curriculum. Most narcissists will not experience your boundaries as respect. They will experience them as abandonment, betrayal, cruelty. Because your absorption served a function in their psychic economy. It kept their false self intact. It allowed them to maintain the illusion of perfection. When you withdraw that service, their entire structure destabilizes. The demons they exiled now surround them with nowhere to go. This is terrifying. And terror often expresses itself as rage. They will try every tool in their arsenal to force you back into the old dynamic. Guilt, accusations, threats, promises to change, performances of vulnerability designed to trigger your caretaking instinct. They will find your weak spots, the places where you still doubt yourself, where you still believe you are responsible for their suffering. They will apply pressure to those places with surgical precision. This is why the empath's integration must be solid before attempting to disengage from a narcissistic dynamic. If your boundaries are tentative, if you are still unconsciously identified with the savior complex, if you have not yet faced your own shadow, need to be needed, the narcissist will pull you back. Not because they are evil, but because they are desperate. They are drowning and they will grab onto anything to stay afloat, even if it means pulling you under with them. But if your integration is secure, if you have truly reclaimed your energy and established your sovereignty, their attempts to manipulate will pass through you without hooking. You will see the pattern clearly. You will feel compassion for their suffering without making it your responsibility. You will understand that their rage is not about you. It is about the terror of confronting their own darkness. Most narcissists, when faced with the return of their projections, will flee. They will find a new empath, someone whose boundaries are less developed, someone who will absorb what you are no longer willing to carry. And they will repeat the pattern. Idealization, projection, devaluation, discard. Relationship after relationship, each following the same arc, each ending when the new empath system reaches saturation. This is their path, their karma, if you want to use that language. Their lesson is playing out lifetime after lifetime, some would say, until they are finally ready to turn inward. You cannot force this readiness. You cannot love someone into consciousness. You cannot sacrifice yourself enough to heal their wound. The wound is theirs. The healing must be theirs. Any attempt to do it for them is not help. It is hindrance. But occasionally, in rare moments of grace, the narcissist does not flee. They have exhausted all their options. They have burned through all their relationships. They are cornered by their own demons, with nowhere left to project them. And in that moment of absolute crisis, when the false self finally cracks open, consciousness can enter. What happens then is alchemical. The very darkness they spent a lifetime fleeing becomes the crucible of their transformation. The shame, when finally felt and accepted, reveals the wound beneath the armor. The rage, when consciously experienced, shows where power was stolen or denied. The emptiness, when courageously faced, becomes the space where the true self can finally emerge. This transformation is possible, but it requires conditions most narcissists never meet. It requires isolation from new sources of projection. It requires the complete collapse of the false self. It requires a willingness to sit in unbearable discomfort without numbing or fleeing. It requires, most of all, the capacity for honest self-reflection, which is precisely the capacity the narcissistic structure evolved to prevent. For the empath understanding, this removes the burden of rescue. You do not need to save the narcissist from their shadow work. You cannot save them. Your liberation is your gift to them, even if they reject that gift. By establishing boundaries, by refusing to absorb, you are creating the conditions where transformation becomes possible. Not guaranteed, not likely even, but possible. And possibility is enough. You have offered what can be offered. Whether they take it or flee from it is their choice, their path, their responsibility. Your responsibility is to yourself, to your own soul's integrity, to your own process of individuation. The final lesson for the empath is perhaps the most difficult to accept. You cannot save another person from their shadow work. Not through love, not through sacrifice, not through perfect patience or endless understanding. Each soul must meet its own darkness. Each soul must do its own integration. This is the curriculum of being human. To attempt to do this work for another is not compassion. It is interference with the sacred process of individuation. This understanding transforms how the empath moves through the world. They can still care deeply, still feel the pain of others, still offer help when help is genuinely needed and genuinely useful. But they no longer carry responsibility for outcomes they cannot control. They no longer define their worth by how many people they save. They no longer sacrifice themselves to prove their love. The empath becomes what depth psychology calls the wounded healer who has healed their own wound. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Enough to know that their sensitivity was never the problem. The problem was not knowing where they ended and others began. The problem was confusing absorption with love. The problem was unconscious identification with the savior archetype. Now the empath knows. They can distinguish their own emotions from absorbed material. They can feel deeply without losing themselves. They can witness suffering without drowning in it. They can love expansively without exhausting themselves. This is mastery. And from this mastery, true healing can flow. The empath's presence becomes medicine without effort. They no longer work to heal. They simply exist as wholeness, as integration, as proof that it is possible to survive the empathic wound and emerge sovereign. People unconsciously seek them out because their nervous system emits coherence, stability, groundedness. In their presence, others feel safer, clearer, more able to access their own inner resources. This is healing through resonance rather than intervention. The empath's integrated state creates a field effect. Like a tuning fork struck in a room full of untuned instruments, the coherent frequency invites others into alignment, not through force or manipulation, but through natural entrainment. The empath does not absorb chaos. Their stillness reminds others of their own capacity for stillness. And so the journey comes full circle. What began with unconscious absorption ends with conscious presence. What began with martyrdom ends with sovereignty. What began with confusion ends with clarity. The empath who was once possessed by the archetype of the savior now relates to that archetype, consciously invoking its wisdom when appropriate and releasing it when it is not. The narcissist's demons return to their source not as punishment, but as possibility. The empath's withdrawal of absorption is not cruelty, but respect. Both souls are invited to wholeness through this dynamic. One through establishing boundaries and reclaiming fragmented energy. The other through confronting the shadow they can no longer externalize. Both are on the path of individuation, though walking it in opposite directions. This is the hidden warning at the heart of depth psychology. Projection is not overcome by force, it is overcome by consciousness. When the empath becomes conscious of the dynamic, when they see the pattern clearly and choose differently, the spell breaks for everyone involved. The narcissist may not choose transformation. They may flee into new unconscious patterns. But the possibility was offered. The door was opened. What happens next is their sacred responsibility. For the empath, the transformation is complete when they can look upon their past suffering not with resentment, but with understanding. Every moment of absorbed darkness was teaching discernment. Every experience of losing themselves was preparing them to find themselves. Every relationship where they dissolved into another's needs was showing them the necessity of sovereignty. The wound becomes the gift. The sensitivity that felt like a curse reveals itself as refined perception. The empathy that led to absorption transforms into conscious compassion. The openness that made them vulnerable becomes the doorway through which wisdom enters. This is the alchemical gold depth psychology speaks of. Not the elimination of the wound, but its transformation into medicine. The empath walks forward now carrying their sensitivity as one carries a lantern. To illuminate, not to be consumed. To sense, not to absorb. To witness, not to rescue. They move through the world suffering as one who remembers that the highest service is not to take on another's pain, but to remind them of their own capacity to transform it. And in this remembering, in this modeling of conscious empathy, the empath fulfills their archetypal function. They become the bridge between wound and wisdom, between sensitivity and strength, between feeling and consciousness. They prove that it is possible to remain open without being destroyed, possible to care without dissolving, possible to love without losing the sacred boundary of self. This is how individual transformation serves collective evolution. This is how personal healing ripples outward into the web of humanity. This is how Carl Jung, empath, and personal development unite in the sacred work of making consciousness visible in human form. When the empath sends the narcissist's demons back, they are not engaging in battle. They are performing an act of radical truth. They are saying this darkness is yours, and in its conscious integration lies your only path to freedom. I release you to your own journey. I reclaim my energy for mine. And in this mutual release, in this mutual recognition of sovereignty, both souls are freed to become who they were always meant to be. The spell is broken, not through force, not through drama, but through the simple, profound act of consciousness choosing itself. But the story does not end with the breaking of the spell. It continues in the daily practice of maintaining consciousness in a world that constantly invites unconsciousness. The empath who has awakened must now learn to live as awakened empathy. And this is where the real work begins. The world will continue to present narcissistic patterns, not just in romantic relationships, but everywhere. In workplaces where leaders demand emotional labor without reciprocity. In families where one person's needs colonize everyone else's attention. In friendships where give and take becomes all give and no take. The narcissistic dynamic is not rare. It is woven into the fabric of many human systems. Power structures often depend on some people absorbing the projections of others. The awakened empath learns to recognize these patterns quickly. There is a felt sense, almost immediate, when someone is attempting to use them as a container. It might be a sudden heaviness in the chest, a subtle draining sensation, a feeling of confusion that does not match the content of the conversation. These somatic signals are the nervous system's early warning system saying this person is projecting this dynamic is unhealthy. Protect your boundaries. In the beginning, the empath may doubt these signals. The old conditioning says, be nice, give people chances, maybe you are being too sensitive. But over time, trust in the body's wisdom deepens. The empath learns that their sensitivity is not a flaw to overcome, but an instrument to honor. When the body says no, when the gut tightens, when the energy suddenly plummets in someone's presence, these are not signs of weakness. They are signs of accurate perception. Living as conscious empathy means learning to trust these signals and act on them swiftly. Not with drama or explanation, but with quiet boundary enforcement. The empath who once would have ignored their discomfort and pushed through now simply steps back. They create distance. They limit contact. They protect their field. And they do this without guilt because they understand that their energy is sacred. And wasting it on unconscious dynamics serves no one. This vigilance is not paranoia. It is wisdom. The empath has learned through hard experience that unconsciousness is contagious. That one person deeply identified with their wounds can destabilize an entire room. That empathic absorption is a reflex that requires constant conscious override. The old neural pathways do not disappear. They quiet down, but they remain. In moments of stress or vulnerability, the empath might find themselves slipping back into old patterns. Absorbing, overgiving, losing boundaries. This is why ongoing practice is essential. Daily check-ins with the self, asking throughout the day, whose emotions am I carrying right now? Whose problems have I made my own? Where have I dissolved my boundaries without noticing? These questions function like depth soundings, revealing how much foreign material has accumulated in the psyche. When the empath notices absorption happening, they can consciously release it. Visualize it flowing back to its source. Reclaim their energy. Reset their boundaries. There are practices from the depth psychological tradition that support this ongoing work. Active imagination, where the empath dialogues with the various figures and archetypes that appear in their inner world. Dream work, paying attention to the symbols and scenarios that the unconscious presents. Shadow work, continually investigating the places where unconscious identification still operates. These practices keep consciousness sharp, keep the empath from falling back into automaticity. The awakened empath also learns the art of sacred selfishness. This is not the selfishness of narcissism, which takes from others to fill an inner void. This is the selfishness of self-preservation, which recognizes that an empty vessel has nothing to pour. The empath learns to prioritize their own nourishment. Time alone to discharge absorbed material. Practices that ground and center. Relationships that reciprocate rather than drain. Work that honors rather than exploits their gifts. This sacred selfishness often triggers guilt initially. The old voices whisper that this is wrong, that truly good people sacrifice themselves, that love means putting everyone else first. But the empath, who has integrated their shadow, knows these voices are lies. They are the remnants of the savior complex trying to reassert control. True love flows from fullness, not depletion. True service comes from overflow, not obligation. The empath cannot give what they do not have, and protecting their own reserves is not selfishness. It is sustainability. As the empath continues to live from this new paradigm, something beautiful begins to happen. They start attracting different people. Because the empath is no longer broadcasting the signal of available container. Narcissistic patterns do not lock onto them. The people who approach are more conscious, more reciprocal, more capable of genuine exchange. Relationships become nourishing rather than draining. Friendships deepen in mutual respect. Even professional relationships shift toward collaboration rather than exploitation. This is not magic. It is resonance. The empath's integrated field repels unconscious dynamics and attracts conscious ones. Like naturally seeks like. Wholeness recognizes wholeness. The empath who has done their integration work no longer needs to teach or fix or save anyone. They simply exist as an example of what is possible, and those who are ready to do their own work will be drawn to that example. Yet the empath must guard against a subtle trap that appears at this stage. The trap of spiritual superiority, of believing that because they have done this work, they are more evolved than those who have not. This is the ego attempting to claim credit for what is actually the work of the self. It is the shadow of enlightenment inflation masquerading as wisdom. True integration is marked by humility. The awakened empath knows they are not finished. Individuation is not a destination, but a process that continues until the last breath. There will always be deeper layers of shadow to integrate subtler forms of identification, to recognize more nuanced boundaries to establish. The moment the empath thinks they have arrived is the moment they have stopped growing. And so the practice continues. Day by day, moment by moment, the empath chooses consciousness over automaticity. They feel deeply, but do not merge. They sense others' pain, but do not carry it. They offer presence, but not sacrifice. They love expansively, but maintain sovereignty. This is the dance of conscious empathy, and it must be learned and relearned, practiced and repracticed, because the pull of unconsciousness never fully disappears. The journey of the empath is ultimately a journey toward wholeness that serves as a template for humanity itself. In a world increasingly fractured, increasingly polarized, increasingly lost in projection and blame, the empath who has learned to establish boundaries while remaining open models a crucial skill. They show that it is possible to maintain clear self-definition while staying in relationship. Possible to protect one's energy while remaining compassionate. Possible to refuse another's projections while still seeing their humanity. This is the gift the awakened empath offers to the collective. Not fixing, not saving, but modeling, showing through their very existence that consciousness is possible, that integration is achievable, that the wound can indeed become wisdom. And as more empaths awaken, as more sensitive souls reclaim their scattered energy and establish their sovereignty, the collective field shifts. The pattern of empath and narcissist, of container and projector, of martyr and exploiter, begins to lose its grip. New patterns become possible. Patterns of mutual respect, of reciprocal exchange, of conscious relationship. This is how the personal becomes collective. This is how individual transformation serves planetary evolution. Each empath who breaks free from unconscious absorption creates a small tear in the fabric of the old pattern. And through enough tears, the entire fabric can be rewoven. So the work continues. The awakened empath moves through the world carrying their sensitivity as sacred gift rather than burden. They trust their perceptions, honor their boundaries, and refuse to sacrifice their essence for anyone's comfort. They know that their liberation serves everyone, even those who resist it. Especially those who resist it. And in those quiet moments when doubt arises, when the old voices whisper that maybe boundaries are selfish, maybe consciousness is cold, maybe love should hurt the empath, returns to the fundamental truth. The truth that consciousness is the highest form of compassion, that protecting your light allows it to shine for others, that you cannot pour from an empty cup and keeping yourself full is the most loving thing you can do. This is the wisdom that emerges from the crucible of the empathic wound. This is the gold that results from the alchemical process of integration. This is the gift that the empath, having journeyed through dissolution and emerged sovereign, brings back to the world. Not as teaching, but as being. Not as philosophy, but as lived reality. The narcissist's demons have returned to their source. The empath's energy has returned to center. The spell that bound them in unconscious entanglement has dissolved. And what remains is two souls each responsible for their own shadow, each walking their own path toward wholeness, each learning in their own time what it means to become conscious. This is the hidden warning, the secret wisdom, the transformational truth that depth psychology offers. When the empath stops absorbing, when boundaries are established, when consciousness enters the dynamic, everyone is freed. Freed to face their own darkness, freed to do their own work, freed to discover who they are beneath the roles and projections and unconscious patterns. The day the empath sends the narcissist's demons back is not the day of battle. It is the day of liberation for both.